The Smashing Machine is in theaters. Could Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson be cooking up an Oscar nomination? I'll tell you right now. Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell here with my review of The Smashing Machine, which has been the subject of a lot of buzz, especially after its debut on the festival circuit. It is from director Benny Safdie, his first film as a solo director after several successful collaborations with his brother Josh. Josh has his own solo project, Marty Supreme, which hits theaters this Christmas. Safdie also wrote the screenplay based on the true story of Mark Kerr, one of the pioneers of MMA, played by Dwayne Johnson in his most serious, least worthy of also calling him The Rock role to date. The film follows Kerr as he gets his start in the early days of UFC, then tries to win a championship in Japan's Pride Fighting League, all while battling personal demons that we actually never really get a good handle on. As I said, there's been a lot of buzz in advance of this movie, especially after it made its debut at the Venice Film Festival a few weeks ago, getting a reported 15-minute standing ovation. Again, I just want to be in the room for one of those. Benny Safdie won Best Director at Venice, but it's been Dwayne Johnson that people have really been talking about as far as awards contention, Oscar contention, and now having seen the film, I think that I can say it is definitively the best performance of Dwayne Johnson's career. No question about that. But the movie itself, I'm not quite as high on. Let's talk about Dwayne Johnson first. He disappears into this role, which is not easy for someone who's as charismatic and well-known as he is. It's not just makeup, although it does make him pretty unrecognizable at times. It's the fact that he did the work on getting this character right. This doesn't feel like Dwayne Johnson acting like someone else. It felt like that I was watching Mark Kerr on screen. Maybe it was easier for Dwayne Johnson to find this character because there is some overlap in Mark Kerr's career as an MMA fighter and Dwayne Johnson's career as a wrestler, not necessarily in the athleticism, but in perhaps some of the fame and stardom and the highs and lows. But for whatever reason, he is really, really good in this role. Would I say he's a cinch, a slam dunk for an Oscar nomination? Not necessarily. Let's see what else comes out this year. But I will say that if he did get nominated, I wouldn't be angry. The supporting performances are similarly strong. Emily Blunt's character, Mark's girlfriend, Dawn, is a mess on the page. And I don't mean like on a character level. I mean on a writing level. But she is good in the part, as always. But I was even more impressed with Ryan Bader, who plays Mark's best friend and fellow fighter, Mark Coleman. I'm not an MMA guy. I don't follow it at all. So I didn't know who Bader was or that he was an actual fighter until after I saw the film. But he gives a very believable, very naturalistic performance. Now, he obviously, I'm sure, drew on his real life for the fighting parts of the movie, but he's very, very good in the dramatic scenes as well, the stuff that doesn't have anything to do with actually getting into the ring or the octagon. Mel Brooks loves to tell this story about a Greek cast member in the original Producers movie who would say, or you got it or you ain't, when it comes to talent. And I would say that when it comes to acting talent, Ryan Bader has it. His performance to me is almost as impressive in the movie as Dwayne Johnson's. It's great that The Smashing Machine has such good performances because I think in other key areas, the movie falls short. Now, this movie was already based on a documentary that I've heard is very good. I have not seen the documentary. And Benny Safdie kind of brings that over into how he makes the movie. It's almost made in a documentary style. It's very cinema verite. But there wasn't enough of a transition in the storytelling. When you're doing something that's based on a documentary, you're making a narrative film, you also have to sort of transform how you tell the story. And I don't think that The Smashing Machine does a very good job of doing that. It basically lacks an act one, dropping us into the middle of these people's lives, into situations where we should care about what's going on or what's happening, but in a way where we don't really understand the narrative motivation behind anything. What is it that drives Mark Kerr to win? What keeps him and Dawn together despite all evidence that they're bad for each other? Who are these people? I'm not saying I need to see Mark Kerr being born or see him as a child. I'm not saying I need to see him meeting Dawn and how their relationship started. But the movie presents itself as if we, the audience, already know about and care about these situations. We're presented the resolution to certain things without understanding what's come before it. There are huge dramatic events like Mark's addiction to opiates and his often dysfunctional codependent relationship with Dawn that take place in very well-acted scenes, but they're devoid of both context and follow-through. They're just a series of events that happen, and then we move on. There's no real narrative propulsion. There's no through line to what's going on. And as a consequence, the movie fell kind of flat for me. I think a great example of this would be the fighting sequences where we hear the play-by-play as the main audio. Now, I wasn't exactly sure looking at the credits who did that, but I believe that it's somebody who actually has done play-by-play announcing for MMA fights before, and that's totally fine. That can often inject a kind of form of reality into a movie like this. But the choice on the play-by-play is to have it done very flat, very matter-of-fact, almost as a narration of what's happening, instead of putting us in that world and feeling like we're in that moment and watching this happen in real time. It would be like if you were watching a Rocky movie and the ring announcer that we hear is just saying, "And here is Rocky Balboa, and he's coming out to fight. This is the biggest fight of his life. We don't quite know what the outcome is going to be versus Apollo Creed. And the fight is over, and what a match this has been between Rocky and Apollo Creed." It does the work narratively, but it doesn't really get us, the audience, involved or invested emotionally. And I feel like that's kind of a microcosm of my issue with the movie overall. It feels like Benny Safdie assumed that we, the audience, already know what the story is and that we're going to be invested in this recreation because of that prior connection. But my guess is that a lot of people in the audience, including myself, don't know who Mark Kerr is or what his story is. And narrative filmmaking is different from documentary filmmaking. I can't say that I was that invested in Mark Kerr's story because I felt like it was being presented to me as if I was in the jury box in a courtroom and Benny Safdie was the lawyer who was just explaining to me what the facts of the case were. Now, a lot of times this approach is elevated by the really, really good performances of the cast, but I think when you have that sort of fundamental tonal and structural issue, it's hard for even a really talented cast to overcome it overall. Now, that's not to say that there isn't passionate filmmaking on display. Benny Safdie did not phone it in as a director, and he gets great performances from his actors. I also think that the movie looks great with cinematography from Maceo Bishop, who shot most of the movie on 16mm, along with some sequences using IMAX 70mm. The score from first-time composer Nala Sinfro is really good, and it really is a movie that succeeds in almost every aspect other than how it tells its story. The Smashing Machine didn't need to descend into cliche in order to get me to care about this story, but it did need to do more work to get me invested. Instead, I feel like I need to go watch the original documentary to get a real idea of who Mark Kerr is and how these events shaped his life and how his life shaped these events. As a potential awards contender, I think The Smashing Machine is a bit of a disappointment. It's a case of style exceeding substance. As a showcase for its actors, it works beautifully. And as a movie overall, I'm going to give it a very low grade, it's good score because it is elevated by the strong ensemble. Otherwise, this would rest squarely in its fine territory and perhaps even a little bit lower. If you're looking for a great performance from Dwayne Johnson and the other members of the cast, then I think that you're going to get exactly what you're hoping for. But if you're looking for much more, then this may not exactly be the knockout that you're expecting. So those are my thoughts on The Smashing Machine. What do you think? Have you already seen it in theaters? Are you planning to go see it in theaters? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, stay tuned right here for the latest in movie news, reviews, box office, and more. We are going to be getting deeper and deeper into awards season in the coming weeks. I'm going to try to see as many of the movies as I can, along with bigger new releases that are coming up, like Tron Ares. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the bell so you're notified when I upload a new video. But most importantly, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.